Upcoming support groups and workshops at Authentically Us. Tuesday, April 29th, 7:30 p.m. Eastern, Speed Friending. Monday, May the 5th at 8 p.m. Eastern, Messy Middle and Divorce Support Group. Thursday, May the 8th at 1 p.m. Eastern, Catalyst Relationship Recovery Support Group. Thursday, May the 15th, 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Releasing Shame and Guilt Workshop. Thursday, May the 22nd, 7 p.m. Eastern, Lavender Dating's Writing Your Online Dating Profile. These online events and more available at Authentically Us, a support community for queer identifying women. For more information and to join, visit AnneMarieZanzal.com. Hey, queer friends and allies. Welcome to Season 6 of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories. I'm very excited to introduce you to my guest today. Her name is Sue Willoughby, and she is a no BS life coach, certified Equus coach, and the founder of Willoughby Coaching. She helps women over 40 get unstuck, ditch the burnout, and finally start living life on their terms with the help of some four-legged wisdom. Sue partners with horses, yes, actual horses, to help her clients cut through the noise, get honest with themselves, and see what's really holding them back. No judgment, no fluff, just powerful, intuitive coaching that reconnects women to who they really are. Her own story? Well, let's just say it didn't start in the calm and balanced lane. Raised by a single alcoholic parent, Sue came out at 17, hit some serious lows, and still built a life of grit, growth, and reinvention. From corporate trainer to stand-up comic, real estate investor, and private pilot. Now she's traded the hustle for a life of purpose, coaching clients with her little slice of heaven outside Seattle, where she lives with her horse Moose, 2 mini Datsuns, and a VW bus named Arlo. If you're ready to shake things up, get real, and stop putting your joy on the back burner, Sue's your girl. Hi, Sue. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Anne-Marie. How are you today? That was lovely.
Oh my
Every
goodness.
time I listen to like my intro or my bio, I'm like, oh my God.
When you're like our age,
We've done a lot.
you've done a lot. Like when I like do my bio, it gets so long now that I have to like cut things out because, you know, it's just long. But now I have so many questions for you. So how I always start this program is I say, tell me your story. So I would love to hear your coming out story.
Well, I'm going to have to hop into the Wayback Machine with Mr. Peabody and Sherman to
There, you seriously dated yourself there.
right?
That's what was the name of that show? Mr. Peabody and the Underdog?
Well, there was yeah, it was there's a whole bunch of different comedy or cartoons from that era. Yes. But yeah, Mr. Peabody and Sherman getting in the Wayback Machine. All right. So let's take a little trip back to the 70s. I was about, let's say 17, and I just had, I always had crushes on my teachers when I was, I remember I had a wicked crush on my 3rd grade teacher and and my babysitters and all that. So I knew there was something else going on all along. This is back in the day. We didn't have the internet. We didn't have swipe right, swipe left, no swiping, none of that. And I actually kind of had a couple of big kahunas there. I put an ad in the local like alternative newspaper, which is kind of funny, right? And it was just, like they had a column of, whatever. And I got some responses, and these were like, old school snail mail, write a letter, enclose a picture, none of this texting. And I was like, oh, it felt a little creepy and weird. I think I maybe went and met one person. Now I'm underage, right? We went and met at a bar. I was always big for my age.
Okay, let me ask you, were you in Seattle then?
No, I was in upstate New York. No, Connecticut, yes.
Whereabouts in Connecticut?
In around the Hartford area. So Hartford, New Haven. Yeah.
I'm from Danbury, Connecticut. So.
Okay. Yeah. It was actually Middletown.
Oh, I know Middletown.
Yeah. Connecticut's not that big.
No, it's like such a small state. We probably, if we start talking after the podcast, we won't do it now. We
Right.
probably know people, but go ahead.
So anyway, I met a couple, people maybe, and it just was like, okay, well, this feels weird and awkward, but I think I'm on the right track. And then I just had this wicked crush on a friend in high school. And, one thing sort of led to another. I was in a sorority, believe it or not, when I was in high school at Middletown. And she pledged for the sorority. I think I sponsored her or whatever. Yeah, you know how that goes. And, we went to the sorority party and of course got a little lit, and I ended up giving her a ride home and she spent the night, and then that was the end of that. And she was actually 15. And she had already had a relationship. I'm like, all right, A+ for you, girl. So that was it. I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. This is it. And then I came out to my mom, who I kind of already, we had spent a lot of vacations with her best friend and her kids a lot. I mean, and I knew there was something going on there, but I came out to her. I remember very distinctly, I was cutting her hair in the kitchen. And I said, "Oh, Mom, by the way, here's the deal. I'm a lesbian and, da, 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 da." And she's like, "I know." And she's like, "And I'm a lesbian too." And I'm like, "I know." So it was kind of uneventful that way.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. All right. So I have to ask the question.
Sure.
How did you have the moxie to put an ad? This is the first time I've ever heard anyone say that. So how did you have the moxie to do that? I mean, first of all, I just like, my goodness, how self-possessed you were.
That's just probably the word right there. Yeah. That's the operative word. I didn't know how else to meet people. And, there's they had personal ads, right? In sort of the offbeat
Yeah,
newspaper.
like it was at the Fairfield Advocate or something like that.
Some advocate thing. Yes. And it was like, and I'm like, well, I'll give it a shot.
Mhm.
So I actually put the ad. I don't think I responded to somebody's ad, but
Mhm.
whatever it was, I did it. And because I didn't know how else to meet people, but that's how I kind of go through life anyway. I take risks and I'm
Mhm.
just, hey, I'm curious if I want to find out something. Oh, all right. Well, I want to meet other queer people and see what's going on. So
So let me ask you, after you came out to your mom, she came out to you, um, did you guys talk about it anymore? Like,
absolutely.
okay, okay.
Yeah. So, if your audience is thinking, oh, that must be great. You had a queer mother and that must have been really awesome. No, yes and no, because, I started working at bars and, so I could meet more people. I'm like, okay, I got to go to the source, right? Wherever.
At the time, was it,
Yeah. And so, mom would show up at the bars, which was, or, she'd get real attached to some of my girlfriends, and not that way, but, she'd like one. And then if I'd break up with her, then she'd be mad at me. I'm like, oh my God, this is way too much drama to have your mama involved in the drama. We don't need that.
No, absolutely not.
So it was good and not good. I mean, obviously I landed in a safe place. So that was good. But
You
I mean, it was
to worry about being rejected because you were gay from your parent,
not from my mother. Yeah.
from your mother. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So that was kind of how that went. And, yes, we did talk. I mean, it was like a non thing to talk about, really.
After that, what happened?
Okay, we're still in the Wayback Machine. Well, I mean, that first relationship was a big one. It was all in, madly in love, blah blah blah, and it was intense. It was really really intense, and it didn't end well. Meaning that, I mean, we knew each other after a while, but the breakup and everything, I was devastated. I was heartbroken. I was like, okay, now what? And I attempted suicide
Mhm.
because I was not in a good place. I mean, for any number of reasons. I was heartbroken. I was also kind of fucked up. I'll be sorry if I, I don't know if you
It's
had a
That's
paper.
okay.
I mean, I didn't have my shit together. I was just kind of out there flying by the seat of my pants. I didn't have a lot of adult supervision growing up, so I was partying a lot and I was just not in a great place. And it wasn't that I wanted to die. I just didn't want to live, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's just wants the pain to go away.
Yes.
It's not that you wanna die.
Right.
It's for most people. It's that you
Right.
just wanna stop feeling all the incredible pain. I get that a lot. My dad was an alcoholic. I was raised in an alcoholic home, so I understand all those things and also the profound effect it had on me. And I also didn't have I had supervision, but not a lot of interest. You know, my parents were my parents were married and they fought a lot. It was just like eventually they stopped, but I was a grown up by then.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I understand that. You know, you'll find it really interesting that most of the women that come out later in life often come from very chaotic homes. And I have done a lot of thinking. My wife also came from a chaotic home. She's not a late in life lesbian, but she did come from a chaotic home. And I've done a lot of thinking. Like I've always like wondered, like, so how come some of us get caught in heteronormativity and figure like even women that have had sexual relationships with other women, they end up marrying a man. You know, how do some of us get caught in all of that? And then other people like yourself and tons of other lesbians and my wife and everything like that don't. I mean, like what is the determining factor there? I have my own theories, but I'm just really curious about like what's the factor there that made you in 1977 when or you know mid 70s when it really wasn't something you should be doing and you did it. And I mean like I'm really curious about what do you think could be the difference?
That's an interesting question because I mean, I did, try and adhere to some social norms and, date boys and all that kind of stuff. And it just never felt right. I liked them because they had cool cars or motorcycles or other stuff that I was interested in. So it was really easy to hang out with them in that regard. But it wasn't, I never thought I'd get married. I never ever wanted to have children. I felt too selfish and also just like I'm not capable of being a parent, and which was probably a good choice.
My wife my wife is I have 4, and so she said it's the best decision she's ever made in her life not to have kids.
Right. I
That
just knew it, yeah.
confirmed all her life choices.
I just
She
never had
loves kids, don't get me wrong, but she's like, "Oh god, they're always" it's a lot.
it's a lot, and I'm like, I am trying to take care of myself here, because when you do grow up, my parents stayed together until I was probably about 11-ish, I don't know, but, they for the good of the child, and it really was not for the good of the child. So they didn't do me any favors, let's put it that way, because like you said, they're arguing and they hated each other. So, but I did choose to go live with my mother, knowing full well what I was in for, kind of, right? When you're a kid, but then when it's in your face, it's a whole nother thing. So I was really independent and I had to really take care of myself. So when you say, well, why did you put an ad in the paper? I'm like, well, why else? Why not? I was doing my thing and I was trying to figure out throwing as much spaghetti against the wall as I possibly could to figure stuff out. And I just, didn't have a lot of self-regulation, I think is a good way to put it. But I'm kind of getting away from your question. So I think that some people just, whether it may be religion, I was also not raised
Mhm.
religiously, and I didn't have that kind of pressure to be a certain way or do a certain thing. And like I said, with a single parent who was also, lesbian, whether she was fully out or not really, but um, I didn't have that pressure to like, "Oh, when are you going to get married? When are you going to whatever?" So I was able to kind of skirt that a little bit. And it just didn't feel right
Mhm.
to pursue those kinds of relationships with men. Like I said, I have a lot of male friends. I always did. We would hang out. I was always one of the guys, and I had fun doing the stuff that they like to do because it was the same stuff I liked to do.
Yeah, yeah. So, when I read your bio, you had quite a meandering career. You've done a lot of different things,
Mhm.
but I really wanna get to the horses. How did you end up where you are now, using equine therapy and coaching women who are going through significant life transitions?
Yes. Well, the horses have always been a thread in my life. Before I even realized that they were supportive and there to, keep me sane and safe, they were there. Had I was drawn to them. I wanted to take riding lessons. I think every little girl goes through a horsey phase, and I just kind of never got out of it. But whenever I was at the barn and I was around horses, I felt good. I felt safe. I felt whatever. Growing up in upstate New York, I would go to the barn. I'd make my mom take me to the barn in 3 feet of snow. I did not care if it was 20 degrees. It didn't matter. So they were always there. And it was funny because even when I would like drift away from them, like in my teens, maybe I wasn't around them as much. But when we moved to Connecticut, it was about 14 or so, there was a riding stable across the street from the apartment complex where we were living. And the car was barely stopped before I was out the door and running across the street and begging this grizzly guy to, he's like, "Who the hell are you? Where'd you come from?"
Let me do anything.
Right? I'm like, I'll clean stalls and everything. So finally I wore him down enough because I think his wife liked me and she's like, "Hey, give this kid a chance, would you?" So I would clean stalls every day after school just for the opportunity to be around the horses and ride and all that. And he would go get project horses for me to play with, and it was fun. And I would skip school and go to the barn and and then, later in life, like I said, there was always a horse somewhere. It was just a connection that I've always had. I saw, once again, here I am in the weird newspaper looking at ads, and and there's a situation available where I could go to summer camp as a counselor or as a program director and be part of their horse program. I was like, well, that sounded interesting. And it was a camp for individuals with special needs. So I would quit my job, much to my mother's disappointment, and go to summer camp for 2 months and work in the horse program. I didn't really understand that it was therapeutic riding at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It was just horses and people connecting, and it was helpful. And it was, whether they had physical disabilities, emotional, whatever it was there. And I'm like, and then I started to get it, And then as I got older, I found therapeutic riding again and became a volunteer after moving out to Seattle. So that was kind of the thread.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing led to another. I'm also a certified equine massage therapist, which was a little bit different. I really wanted to be in support of the horses because they're always in support of us in one way or another. And so that taught me how to energetically and emotionally hold space for the horses that I was working on. And then that led me to, like you said, it was never a straight, direct line.
Yeah.
And then I found out about Equus coaching. And because I'm not a licensed therapist and I had no intentions of becoming a licensed therapist, but I could coach people and use horses, I'm like, sign me up. So, yeah.
So what is the basis of equine? It's not called equine coaching or Equus. I'm sorry.
Equus coaching. You can also call it equine-assisted coaching. Yeah.
So what is provide?
The horse provides amazing feedback. It's incredible because horses are by nature, they're prey animals.
Mm-hmm.
And no matter how big they are, they're still prey to something in the wild. And instinctively, they're constantly on
The environment.
Yeah, they're constantly tuned. Every cell in their body is about survival and taking in information and am I in danger and what is my herd mate doing and all of this stuff. So they are also herd animals. So they communicate with the other thing, whether it's a person or another horse in their herd. If you're in the arena with a horse, you're part of their herd. And so they're looking at you for, feedback and also for guidance or leadership. And they look at you and say, well, could you get me out of a tough situation if I needed you? No? Okay, well then I'll stay over here, mind my own business.
Mm-hmm.
But they act as a feedback loop. So when someone is in the arena or round pen with the horse is completely at liberty. Like I said, all the activities are on the ground. The horse is free to roam around and do whatever they want and just be a horse.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person can interact with the horse however they choose to. They might do something where they might have a specific, and I say task in air quotes because it gives them something to focus on rather than what they're actually
there for.
Yeah, which is kind of nice. So it's a little bit of a distraction. It creates a container of non-judgment, and then I look at the horse and their behavior, whether it's how their ears are, what they're doing, how are they acting with this person, and that's my feedback loop. And then I can ask the person, what are you seeing from the horse right now? And you can get all kinds of answers. They may project all of their stuff onto the horse. The horse may be a metaphor for someone that they're having an issue with. There's any number of equations that can happen during a coaching session.
Hmm. Hmm. So, what if somebody's coming to you? Do people come to you to process like childhood trauma or anything like that?
Well, they may have some trauma that they're working on with an actual trauma-based therapist. I am not that, right? But as a coach, as you know, things are gonna come up, right? So there may be things that they're processing. If someone is in deep trauma and has not addressed that, then I will immediately stop the session and put a referral in place.
Mhm.
But yes, things are gonna come up, and the beauty of having the horse involved is that it may be something that they either don't feel comfortable or are guarded about discussing verbally with their therapist or whatever, or they've hit a place where they can't get beyond. And the horse, because the horse will connect with the human on a real heart-centric level, at a real biological level. Like, they can sense our heart rates, they can sense our all of our biorhythms, and they can see right past any facade or any wall that we have up and see inside as to what is really going on with the person. So if somebody's trying to hide something, I mean, the horse doesn't care if you're afraid. The horse doesn't care if you're sad. The horse doesn't care if you're mad. It just cares that you're honest with yourself and with them.
Can you give me some examples of work that you've done with folks and how the horse has helped them?
Yeah. Horses are really good at boundaries.
Right.
They're also really good with leadership, because like I said, horses will look to you as the leader, and if you do not take the lead, and by taking the lead, I don't mean forcing something on the horse. When horses are in the wild or in their herd, if something happens to, let's say, startle the herd, and there may be a predator, there may be something, they will all kind of look up, right? And look around and be like, okay, who's not freaking out? Okay, you're the leader. They will look to the calmest, most centered horse, like, what do we do now?
Hmm.
And if that horse just takes off, they're like, okay, yeah, we got to get the hell out of here. Uh,
Hmm.
so they're really good at helping with leadership skills.
Hmm.
The other thing, there's no one thing that people will come for.
Right.
But they may come where they just have hit a point in their life where they don't know how to have fun anymore. They don't know what does joy look like? I don't know. I don't know how to have fun in my life. I don't know what I can do to do something to get to the next level. You can also just someone may walk in and just have so much stuff that they're carrying around that they just dump it on the horse, which is really interesting. For example, someone may walk into the arena and the horse is just over in the corner being a horse or doing whatever. And I let the person interact with the horse a little bit. And if they start to approach the horse and the horse appears to be ignoring them, they're like, oh, the horse is bored with me. The horse doesn't like me. The horse is the horse, the horse, the horse, the horse. The horse is this, the horse is that. And I'm like, really? It's really not about the horse.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see how that would work. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, whatever it is, transference, projection, there's
Yeah,
that
it's like they're what's the word?
morphi.
Anthropomorphizing.
More, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the actions of the horse.
Hmm.
The horse is just sort of existing there. It has no feelings towards this person. Or
Exactly.
I have a question.
Yes.
In ministry, one of the reasons why people wear the black robes is to take away the focus on them, so that like you're not distracted by their clothes, you're not distracted by what they're wearing. How do you work in the ring and not be a distraction for the horse? Because the horse, well, yes, you, because the horse knows you, and I'm sure sees you as a leader, correct?
They can, yes. So I'm not in the arena.
The same horse every time?
Nope, I can work with any horse.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's no training.
that's
You
pretty
can't
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't train them to be a horse. They're just a horse.
So can like if it's somebody that comes to you and has their own horse, can you work with their horse?
I can. Sometimes it's hard because but yes, you can. And it's funny because as a third party, I'm going to see things that they don't see because they have blind spots. We all have blind spots, let's face it. But to answer your question, I want to get back to that.
Yeah.
About how do I not be a distraction? I stay outside of the arena.
So
The
it's only
person,
when you're in the
yeah. Yeah, it's usually a smaller round pen, which is, just it's got, so that the horse doesn't get stuck in a corner and can move around freely. And I stay outside of it and I just observe. So the person is in there with the horse. Now, if for some reason
they
they don't,
talk to you while they're in there with the horse? Okay.
yeah. So I will ask them at the beginning of the session, we've had a conversation. We may have had some sessions online as well. And then they come to me and I ask them for an intention. Set an intention for this session. What do you want to get out of this? Okay. They set the intention. And then after a safety briefing and some other introductions, I allow them to go into the space with the horse and interact however they see fit. Obviously, safety first. And then I let them interact with the horse for a little bit. And I'm watching the horse and I'm watching the person and I'm listening to what they might be saying to the horse. And that gives me the opportunity to ask some really good open-ended coaching questions.
Mm-hmm.
And we just sort of take it from there and see what unfolds without getting, somebody can go in with one intention and
come out with something else. Yeah.
completely. Yes, completely. Because the horse will get right to the crux of the matter very quickly.
That's just very, very interesting to me that the horse can pick up things. I can understand like why it could work for people because they're sort of distracted by the horse and they're not their gates, their walls may be coming down. They may not be paying attention to their walls because they're sort of like I'm sure like you get people that love horses and it's the best thing ever. I would be nervous if I went into a pen with a horse just because I don't have much experience with them, and so I would be a little bit nervous, but I'd still, try to go over there and, what I'm really curious, like like coaching that happens with somebody who is like a horsewoman, loves the horses, just, has been with a million horses, really understands them and stuff like that, versus somebody like me who, only ridden them like twice in her life, What's the difference? Like, is there a difference?
Yes and no. There is because sometimes horse people get a little cocky, for lack of a better word, or they're like, well, I can go in there and do these tasks. Well, once again, what I'm saying is it's not about the horse. And so they may be doing something and yes, they may be accomplishing the task, whatever the task at hand that they think is. And then if I flip the script on it a little bit and just say it's not about that, we get more into what's actually happening. Okay, great. You sent the horse around the arena. What did you get out of that? Well, I accomplished the thing. Okay, but why are you here? Why are you, what is really going on? So it's kind of like, okay, let's just put your horse skills aside because it's not about that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's work on and then all of a sudden it gets real and they're like, oh, okay, this is different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And if you're afraid of the horse or if you're, a little apprehensive, that's okay. The horse doesn't care. The horse is not going to, put you at risk unless, of course, you're threatening to the horse. And then the horse is like, hey, I got to take care of myself here. I'm sorry. But it gives you the opportunity, whether you're a horse person or whether you're not a horse person. And a lot of times, if you have had some experience with the horse can be a really great metaphor for something else in your life.
Can you explain that to me?
Yeah. So if I had a client who was having some issues with her adult-ish son, right? He was starting to move on in his life and so forth. And she was in the arena with the horse and she didn't want to leave the horse's side. She didn't want the horse to go away. Hello, right?
Yeah.
I said, why don't you send the horse off? And she's like, I don't want to. I said, well, why? Why don't you want to send the horse off? Well, it might not come back. Oh, okay. Where's that showing up in your, like I said, I don't think that was her intention when she started whatever the session was. But so yeah, so the horse was a metaphor for her son. And finally she got to the point where she could send the horse off. The horse would go off and trot around the arena and turn back to face her and then come in to her. So we talked about that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I can understand that. So, like, what are some of the actions that the horses have that you see that, like, I would never see? Like, I don't know horses that well. So,
Right.
you've been doing this your whole life. So that, like, I can see things with, like for example, walking into a hospital room or a hospice room, I can see things that, you would not be able to see. But you've been with horses your entire life. Like, what are some of the things that you see with the behavior that the layman wouldn't see, laywoman wouldn't see?
Yeah, they have so many really subtle behaviors. And like I said, they're very, every ounce of their body, every cell in their body is a sensory organ on some level. Their ears work independently of each other. They really do smell a lot. They use their sense of smell. Their whiskers are, like little feelers. Their skin is very sensitive. If they're sensing incongruency with the person, so like I said, they are looking for, is the person's inside matching their outsides? So I'm watching the horse, and if the horse is kind of staying away from the person, if they're not, then, I may ask them, why do you think the horse, what are you sensing from the horse? What are you seeing from the horse? And so I'm just watching how the horse is taking care of themselves, because that's what they do. That is their main goal in life. Do they feel comfortable coming up to the person? If they don't, what are they exhibiting? And I will ask the client the same question. What are you observing from the horse? And whether you know anything about horse behavior or not, they'll say, well, he's standing way over there and he's turning his butt to me, and, or he's, he's pinning his ears back, or whatever he's doing, or he's just standing there staring at me.
Mhm.
And the same thing, like if they're trying to get the horse to move or do a certain thing, and the horse keeps turning around to face them and turning around to face them, and they're like, "How do I get the horse to get away from me?" And I said, "Well, what are you trying?" And then they'll tell me, "Okay, what else can you try?" And I think that's a really good thing for, like, I go through life by doing the same thing over and over again and getting the same result. Surprise!
Right. So now it's time to try something new. Yeah, absolutely.
Some of the stuff is really subtle, and some of it's just the horse being the horse.
So I got to ask you something as one adult child of an alcoholic to another. You said that the horses are prey. So their bodies are always attuned. They're always like just searching for danger actually,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Processing information, I like to think of it.
Processing. How does that align with your like people who grow up in alcoholic homes are always like they're very good at reading a room. They're always they always check a room for safety. They always look at the faces of the people around them. They're often very good at reading the faces of the people around them until you grow up and you shouldn't assume, you should ask. How does that align with your own experiences as a human?
Oh, I'd say it's pretty spot on in terms of that, because, I always had to take care of myself. Like, am I going to get picked up from school today? Oh, here comes my mom screaming into the parking lot at 60 miles an hour, whoa,
Yeah.
and you're absolutely right. So I think that's probably why I identify with horses, or have since I was a little kid, because we're both in the same boat. We're like, okay, how do we keep ourselves safe? How do we, and like you said, I'm very intuitive. I listen to my gut a lot. And
Absolutely.
that's a big thing in the Equus coaching piece as well. People spend so much time in their heads, they forget that all of this stuff that we have is stored in our bodies. All the trauma, all the experiences that we've had lives in our bodies, right? What's the name of that book? The Body Keeps the Score. It's true.
Hmm.
When people are reacting to a certain thing, or they're having an experience with the horse, I might ask them, or I will ask them, where do you feel that? Or I might ask them, what are you experiencing? Well, I'm mad. What does mad feel like? Well, what do you mean? Where in your body, when you say mad, the word mad, when you feel mad, where does it start? So it really gets them back into their bodies, regrounds them, and gives them the ability to sense, build up that sensory awareness within themselves, just like a horse does.
So do you find that people experience somatic relief when they're working with the horse?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So is it more of, okay, so so with somatics, all our memories live within our bodies, and a lot of times they get stuck there.
Hmm.
The energy gets stuck there. So working with the horse, does it work like with somatics where you're able to release some of the pent up energy, trauma, whatever that is stored in your body?
Yeah, absolutely. It'll come out. People, I've had people. One day we were at a retreat, and I swear, everyone I worked with just came in and to the arena and lost it immediately. Had huge emotional releases, and part of that is just feeling the comfort and the horse, the heart centered connection. I'm holding energetic space for the horse and the client and myself, right? So I'm creating the bigger container. And then the horse is creating a smaller container for the person that is more directly connected with them in the session.
Mhm.
And when people can feel that, yes, it's a physical, it's a very somatic release. And like I said, it may come out in tears, it may come out in, you don't know exactly, right? But it is usually a very emotional release. And if the person or if the horse has been staying away from the person, just giving them some space for whatever reason, when the person does have that release and they get back into their bodies and they're grounded and they're, experiencing that, the horse will come right over to them 9 times out of 10. Right. And, the horse may just stand next to them and just be like, I'm here. I'm here.
Here.
I'm
So
here.
presence, right? Presence. Who is the ideal person to seek equine therapy?
Well, I hate to say anybody.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Yeah.
I would say the people that would benefit from it the most would be someone who has something specific where they're feeling like they've run into a wall, or they just can't access the answers that they need.
Mhm.
And they would want to be able to open up, get out of their comfort zone, find a new access point and build awareness. And that to me is the key of any progress or any tiny baby step, is building that awareness. And like I said, horses are always processing information. All of our emotions, any altercation that we have with anybody, anything, it's just information. And when you can start to realize that it's just data, it's just information, you bring it in, you process it, and then you let it go, which is a beautiful thing that we can also learn from horses. So if you're holding on to something, then you just can't let it go. We have a hard time with that. We tell all these beautiful stories and we go down all these little rat holes of place, so and so did this and this and this and this. Horses don't do that. They don't stand around the watering tub and talk about 6 months ago when the plastic bag, blew up against the tree and scared the crap out of them. We'd still be talking about it, but
So I know you don't work with people who specifically, childhood trauma may come up in your work.
yes,
But are there
absolutely.
therapists that work with people that have experienced significant childhood trauma and are able to help them process that trauma? Or is it just anyone who does equine therapy?
Yes, there are people that specialize in childhood trauma. Like you said, I have encountered things that people that come up during a session. There are also people that are specifically licensed therapists
Go do this work.
that will work with, whether they work directly with the horse or they work with someone like me who actually is sort of like the horse interpreter. Yeah, I mean, they usually have a horse handler so that they can then focus on the client and I can focus on the horse, or somebody like that can focus on the horse. So it can be triangulated that way as well.
Mhm.
But yeah, there are people that do specialize in that.
So if people find this interesting, how do they find you?
Ask a horse. No, just kidding. Ask a horse. Yeah, you can find me through willoughbycoaching.com. I'm also on Instagram at Sue_Willoughby. I have my own podcast called A Life Worth Being, and I have people on that have been through as my guests, not necessarily horse coaching, but they've been through transitions in their lives and transformations, and they've come out the other side and lived to tell the tale. So those are the best places to get in touch with me is basically just my website, willoughbycoaching.com.
And I love that you have a podcast because I think that's really nice. People can get to know you and say, hey, she sounds like somebody great to work with, or I don't know about her, but it's not.
Yeah, right. And I do have a second podcast that I just started with one of my fellow Equus coaches, and it's also a weekly drop. My podcast drops on Tuesdays, and my second podcast that I do with my cohort Frida drops on Wednesdays, and that's just coach to coach. We talk about current topics, not political current topics, but current coaching topics, and then we always bring the horses in to the loop, not physically, but in our conversation, and that's really fun as well.
Well, I think that's really cool what you do. I think it's very, very interesting. And so thank you so much for telling me about it today, and also our listeners. So I always end this program with 3 questions. And so my first question is, do you have a coming out song, Sue?
I forgot about that. Well, let's see. When I came out in the 70s and, always in the clubs, it was like, We Are Family and Diana Ross, I'm Coming Out. Come on now, right?
Were you in the clubs in New York? Were you in Connecticut then, or were you in other clubs?
I was in Connecticut. Yeah, I was in
So,
Connecticut. And I was a DJ because, when you're in the DJ booth, you can, kind of
scope everybody out.
Yeah, totally.
What club was it? Can I ask?
Let's see. The first club I worked at was called Evergreen, and it was in Hartford. And then I worked at a couple other clubs in the New Haven area over the years.
I would think Middletown would have some clubs because of this.
They didn't really.
Because Wellesley being there, they didn't. Is it Wellesley? Yeah,
Wellesley. No,
Wellesley is there. Yeah. So no, I thought. I mean, it's very gay now, Middletown. Super gay.
Who knew?
Yeah. A book or a movie that has really, changed your perspective on things.
On queer things or on things in general?
Just life. Doesn't matter. If it's queer, fine. If it's not, okay.
Yeah.
Because you know what? We're more than just queer, right?
Oh yeah, we are. That's right. It's interesting when I was in, high school and junior high and stuff like that. I think like a couple of the books that we had to read, one of them was Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. That was an intense book. A queer book was Ruby Fruit Jungle. That was like one of my first queer books that I.
So you read that in high school?
Well, when I was younger, not in high school, that was not required reading. That was just
I was like, oh my God, you went to a progressive high school.
I actually did, but yes.
Yeah, Ruby Fruit Jungle is like for lesbians of a certain generation, it is definitely one of those books that everyone's read. I tried to read it. It was okay.
Yeah, well, when you're a kid, you're just like hungry for anything, right? Things have gotten more sophisticated now, like movies. What was it? Desert Hearts was one of the first.
We were just actually my podcast I just recorded. We were talking about what happened is somebody was talking to me on chat, and I said talking about them about their exploring their sexuality, and they said, "How do I do that?" And I was like, "That is such a great question."
Yeah.
And so one of the things we were talking about is queer media, which is much bigger today. And
oh my God, yes.
And we were also saying avoid the movies where the butch dies. But we were talking about Desert Hearts because, the women I work with, they're, generally in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. But the women that are in their 50s and 60s, that's what their contemporaries would know. So that when they would go to, if they're a group of lesbians and people are talking about some movies they watched, Desert Hearts, so people bring it up. And actually, my wife was like poo-pooing it, and then we watched it again. She goes, actually, this is a good one.
The better ones. I mean,
it's one of the better ones. Nobody dies, and there's good sex scenes in it,
Yeah, and the women were attractive. I mean, I can start quoting some lines from that movie anytime.
Yeah.
It was, and I mean, it took place back in the, the 50s when it was really.
No, I think it was like the 30s or 40s. I mean, so.
No, I'm thinking about the car she drove, that black Ford.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably
50s.
Yeah, cars better than I do.
Like, none of that was the
it was
50s.
such a good movie. It was such
Yeah, it really was.
It really was, because some of them, like my wife talks about the vampire movie that was really popular with Catherine Deneuve in the 80s.
Yeah, that was pretty hot too,
Yeah,
yes.
and so she was like, everybody was all they could do was talk about it. There's like a 20-second sex scene. So we're off track a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
How would you describe your life today?
Fantastic. It is, I feel like I never thought I would be here. I never thought that I would be in the place that I'm in physically, emotionally, financially. I feel like everything has turned out exactly the way it was meant to turn out, and it couldn't be better. I mean, that sounds a little Pollyanna-ish, but I mean, I went through a lot of shit, right?
We all do.
Yeah, we all do. And sometimes you come out the other side and sometimes you don't. But I think if you listen to what is really happening and the opportunities that you have, and you don't get stuck in the, oh, poor me, I had such a rough life kind of a thing, there's a lot of good stuff out there. And I mean, I feel very positive about my life and the things that I've done and have been able to accomplish. And also, hopefully being some sort of an inspiration and some sort of a beacon for other folks to move forward.
To get out there and embrace the
Yeah.
change.
Yeah,
And not be afraid of it.
exactly.
A lot of times when, people are stuck, it's not that they're stuck because of any of the internal circumstances. It's always the external circumstances.
It's internal.
It's
Yeah.
the internal circumstances that keep people stuck, because they're going to have to step out of their comfort zone, and right outside of that is fear. So having someone like you guide them, and also the unique way that you do it with the horses, is very, very interesting. So Sue, I want to thank you for coming on the program today, and please reach out to Sue Willoughby if what she does sounds intriguing to you. So thanks, Sue.
Yes. Thanks for having me on, Anne-Marie. I really appreciate you.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.